Olá, muito obrigada pela presença. Hoje nós temos um convidado muito especial, um dos maiores pianistas do mundo, Arnaldo Cohen. Hoje a entrevistadora será a doutora Rosângela Seba e o programa será todo em inglês. The Piano and Its Perspective is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts, Digital Department and Pursuits of Culture of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidad del Atlántico na Colômbia, and Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária, and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yazbek Seba, and Yamira Rodrigues Nunes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. I invite now Dr. Rosângela Seba.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor to be here with Arnaldo Cohen, one of the greatest pianists of our time, known for a long time as one of the winners, the first prize winner of 1972 Busoni International Competition. And he has performed all over the world with orchestras from around the world, as well as orchestras in Brazil. He taught in England and is currently the professor of piano at Indiana University. We know a lot about his performance abilities, but he's also an excellent teacher. So I would like to invite Arnaldo Cohen to join us for this interview. Good afternoon, Arnaldo.
Hello, great pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. It's been a pleasure and a dream come true. So I really appreciate your willingness to talk to us today. We will be speaking in English, although we both speak Portuguese, so we can reach out to other audiences around the world. It's basically in Latin America, Europe, and United States. So I would like to ask you a general question that I usually start my interviews, which is, how did you start learning music? I know you also you are an excellent violinist. So how did you learn music?
Well, that's a long story. First of all, great pleasure being here and talking to all these people. And in an age where classical music sometimes seems to be something from the past. But my background is a completely non-orthodox at all. Because first I started music like all kids. My sister started piano, Miriam Grossman, who was a teacher until recently from the School of Music of the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro. And my father decided that I should play violin. So, and a little bit later, I started piano because I was fascinated by the piano, by the sound of the piano, especially because to play violin is much more difficult than playing piano, especially the beginning. The beginning can be very boring and very annoying because you play out of tune with a horrible sound. So in the piano, if you play out of tune, it's not your fault, it's the technician, it's the piano tuner. So for some time, I practiced piano and violin, but this originally, basically the study of music was, according to my parents, just to give me a general education and, in humanities and general culture. Therefore, I was very kind of fond of mathematics, and I decided because of that go into engineering. So to make a kind of a long story short, when I was 20, I was doing 3 majors in university, at the Federal University. in Rio de Janeiro. I'm sure all of you can appreciate and sympathize with my hard life doing 3 majors, piano, violin, and engineering separately at the same time. I used to sleep, 3-4 hours a day maximum, until the moment I was invited to play in a master class given by one of the great Brazilian pianists called Jacques Klein.
Jacques Klein.
And then of course, I was an amateur. I used to practice 3 hours a week, and he, after I played, he said, "I want to talk to you," and he said, I was very amateur. I didn't know anything. I didn't have technique. I didn't have, and of course I said, sure. That was the reason I didn't want to come here in the first place, because there's no news for me. And he said, yes, but in spite of that, I believe that you have all ingredients to become a very, very good pianist, a very good musician. I didn't know what a good musician was, and then the only thing came to my mind. Still, appealing to those films in those times, very romantic, with Elizabeth Taylor. Many of you, I think, perhaps don't even know who Elizabeth Taylor was, but and I just asked him, "You mean international?" Because for me, international meant, if I wanted to travel, of course. And I said, well, if it's international, it's because people want you. If they want you around the world, it's because you must be good. So that was the definition for me of a good pianist, good musician, international. So he said yes. And then I asked, would you teach me? He said yes. And I said, for free. He said, why? I said, because I'm sure I'm going to quit and leave my home. My parents certainly would be against it, so I'll have to work. I don't know how much you charge for lesson. I don't know if I will be able to survive. So I'm not sure. He said, if that will be the case, I'll give you free lessons, which he did. And I'm forever grateful to this man, because his trust in my talent and my possibilities. And then this was, after 5 years of that, I won the first prize in the Busoni competition. So it took me 5 years to learn 2 recital programs and 2 piano concertos. And I won this prize in the start of a professional career with almost no repertoire at all. So that was my start. Difficult.
Do you consider him your greatest influence? Do you think he's the one that propelled your career?
Yes, in many aspects. Jacques, there was some similarities, between his past as well, because he was a jazz pianist before. He was studying to be a diplomat.
Yeah.
So I think he saw in myself exactly what he had, what he did. So he understood my position first. Second, he was, first of all, a great musician. He never went to a school. He didn't have any, even undergrad course. Everything was, listening here. He was a student of 2 great teachers, 2 great professors. One, I studied with him, was Bruno Zeidelhofer in Vienna, who I studied for 8 months only in Vienna. The money was not enough to go more than that. And William Capell, American pianist, who died very, very, very young in an airplane crash. So he passed all those musicalities and ideas and tricks in the piano. And I learned with him what projection on a stage, for instance, is. I think I understood one of the best things he did, he helped me, was to show me the difference between playing in a small room and a big concert hall. And the rest, I think, I mean, I went to University of Life. One very important part of my life during those 5 years was that as I had to survive, I had to work. And then I applied and made a competition. I passed, and I became a violinist of the Opera House Orchestra in Rio, where I played violin between my piano studies. I was a terrible violinist, I must say. Was not good, so Rosangela. I was very bad. I was the last of the Mohicans. I used to call myself. I was the last of the seconds. So, but at those times, I regretted very much I had to waste my time playing violin, because I wanted to dedicate my time to piano. But today, when I look back, I think that time was terribly important for me, because I played operas, I played everything you can imagine. I played piano concertos, I played Rachmaninoff concertos, Beethoven concertos from the orchestra. So I played with wonderful conductors, and I played with horrible conductors. This was a great school. So a friend of mine always said that, you know, bad conductors love you because they know how to play with them. So anyway, this just jokes on the side. This was absolutely very important. So having lessons with Jacques and playing violin in an orchestra and the strong and new repertoire, having to practice, my fingers were like spaghetti, well cooked, and I had to strengthen my everything. I had to learn everything in the kind of a 5 years and be ready for it. So I survived.
Do you remember the repertoire that you learned in 5 years for the Busoni competition?
Oh yes, I did. I did very much the Haydn F major sonata, Hoboken 16, number 23 in F major. I did the Waldstein sonata, the Opus 53 Beethoven. I played Prokofiev 7th sonata. I played Brahms Handel variations. I played the Ravel sonatina. I played some Busoni preludes. I played the Chaconne, which has been a piece that accompanied my life throughout all these years. And the Chaconne de Barbusoni became kind of an inseparable friend. And, you know, I don't know why, but I'm so attached to that piece.
It's not an easy piece at all. It's a bugger. I mean, it's a big one and heavy one. Yeah.
Yes, and every time I can, I take it with me on the trip. So, and I played, you know, Piano Concertos number 3 was kind of a very, very important. And the first piano concerto I played in my life, when I was still a kid, 14 years old, I played with the Brazilian Symphony Orchestra in a competition in Rio, was the Mendelssohn one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, came everything for me. Horowitz was a great example. And, of course, I went through that period where Rachmaninoff and the big things, the big technique that I thought I didn't have, were always my goal, was just the Everest, the mountain I had to climb. So, and Tchaikovsky, and then the rest is just development.
And I've seen you talking about the Busoni and how you went there hoping to at least pass the first level, and then the second, and then you went to the finals, and they tied the 3rd place, and no 2nd place, right?
Yeah, and they were very good, very friendly years, I must say. And I was very lucky. I was very, you know, I think one very important thing I think I've never mentioned, that perhaps you mentioned both reasons, very important reasons perhaps, perhaps the most important reason why I think I won that competition is because the degree of expectations, my degree of expectation was very low in that competition. So when I went to the semifinals, for me, that meant I won. Not the competition, but to go to the semifinals was already a win, because I thought I'm not going to even pass the first round. So anything that comes in, it's just, as we say in Portuguese, profit. Tudo que entrar é lucro. So when I entered on the stage, I was not nervous. I was happy. I was okay. It's like a winner's concert. And then when I went to the finals, I said, that was the biggest surprise. That was the celebration of the winning.
So what was the awards at that time? Did you have several recitals to give? And
yeah. Actually, there was, a part of it was some money, which I lost the money on in the eve of the winner's concert. I went to I used to smoke those times, and in the evening, 11 o'clock in the evening, my cigarettes, I was out of cigarettes. I went to the train station, to buy cigarettes in the machine. I took my little purse with everything I had, including the money, and I left the purse, got cigarettes, and I lost everything I had, even my passport. And so there was, money, forget about it. I was, by the way, I was supposed to leave for the Leeds competition next day, and I couldn't go because I didn't have a passport. That was when Murray Pariah won.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I know Murray, and when I meet him, I always say, well, that was God that helped me for someone to steal my bag. He said, no, that was my God. Anyway, and then the prize were so many concerts. Look, I don't remember how many, but I would say around 40 concerts. So after that, I played, I don't know, but I must have played at least 300, 400 concerts in Italy. Mm-hmm. I played everywhere because the Busoni used to be one of the most important competitions in the world, but in Italy was and when I won the world, they didn't award the first prize for 3 or 4 years. Mm. And this every year, and that, people were waiting for, who is going to be the next Busoni, as they call. And I was, very lucky. And that was a great, I called my PhD, were those concerts, when I really learned, the craft, start learning.
And is that when you started building the repertoire, or you have a certain amount? Yeah.
And people say, manager would say, can you play Rachmaninoff second? I have never played before. I said, sure I can. When for? He said, once they said, for 2 months' time. I said, because normally everything goes to the next season. And I was accepting anything. And, and then I had to work very hard. My first Rachmaninoff second was really bad because I learned it in 2 months. I learned Rachmaninoff third in 28 days.
Oh, okay.
Look, at the beginning of my life, people would say, have you played the Schumann concerto? I said, yes. I mean, can you play it after tomorrow? And I would say, sure. Of course, I had played, but it's very, very hard. I remember once playing, someone called from Italy, sorry, I was living in London already, to replace someone with the Rotterdam Philharmonic in Holland, and say, can you play Beethoven 5 tonight? Last time
tonight.
That particular night. I said, well, I don't know. Would you give me 20 minutes, because then I went to the piano to see, because I played Beethoven 5 a year before. I didn't know if I remembered.
Yeah.
So,
and the third movement is tricky. The third movement is quite tricky. Yeah.
So I went there. I arrived there. I went, I remember in the airplane, the tray. I put the tray and I put the music there and I started. The guy was next to me. Says, this guy is totally crazy. I was practicing on the tray of the plane.
Yeah.
And I arrived there. I had a little rehearsal only with the conductor because I did, and we got into the platform without any rehearsal, and we played from the beginning to the end. So I still have a kind of an article in the newspaper saying Cohen saved the day because on the particular day. So I felt very relieved, but at the same time, those were days that you could test yourself to see what life gave me the chance to test my abilities, to see where I could go, and I was always pushing to see, and that being very hard. I worked like mad, but it paid off.
So you probably just dedicated your life after that to just practice, or did you move to Europe during that time? And
Yes, I moved. Actually, a manager in Italy, my manager in Holland, called me once, to replace one of those concerts, to replace Martha Argerich at the Concertgebouw. And I went, and it was very successful. And next week he called me and he said, look, I have already, I don't know how many concerts for next season, but I have to warn you, if you don't come and live in Europe, I'm not going to represent you anymore. And I said, why? Said, because you have to be here exactly for this kind of situations for you, because you are not known, you start being known, and they need you being here. So that was the reason why. Then I went to live in London as an illegal, always afraid of the police and immigration.
And what was your change to the United States? Because I remember when you came to the United States, and I remember somebody mentioning to me, at Indiana, I was going to Indiana. I just didn't have the money. And they didn't give me enough scholarship. So anyway, long story short, somebody once said, there's a new piano professor there, and he's fabulous. And he's from Brazil. And I said, well, who is he? And then they said, Arnaldo Cohen. I said, yes, he is great. So what was that transition coming to the U.S.?
Actually, I started my life in Europe, in the States, very, very late. I would say in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started traveling and touring here. And I have met, many friends around the world, Menahem Pressler and Edward Auer, lots of people and I met Edward in the jury of the Chopin competition in Warsaw and others, and you see how things go. I was playing in the East Coast. I think in Baltimore, I think we were playing with an orchestra, and my manager called me and said, look, Lang Lang has canceled 3 concerts with the Indianapolis Symphony. This coming with, and that was my last concert in the US. I was meant to go to live for Europe the next day or 2 days later, and I would have 1 week free in Europe before starting other concerts. And I said, well, I mean, there are 3 concerts next week. I said, okay, but what's the repertoire? And they say Mendelssohn 1, which was the concert, my first piano concerto. And I said, okay. And then we discussed about conductors and so and so. And then I came. So I came to Indianapolis and I told my friends here in Indiana, in Bloomington, that I was there, inviting them to go. And a friend of mine, Evelyn Brancard, who was the piano chair, said, Arnaldo, would you come here and just do a master class for us during your time in Indianapolis? I said, okay. Then just to see friends, I came here. I gave a master class. We had dinner with my friends. And it was a lovely time. By the way, in the late 80s, in Holland, finally, in the Concertgebouw, I met Menachem Pressler, and we had lunch together. And he tried to bring me here. And I said, but Menachem, Bloomington, Indiana, where is this? Indiana Jones, where is that? Indiana for me was Indiana Jones. So he said, oh, it's wonderful. And I said, well, I don't think, it's time yet for me just to put myself, in Bloomington. I still have lots of things to do. And a long story short again, I went to the concerts. And before leaving for the last concert on Saturday, the dean, my good friend, Gwen Richards, called me at the hotel and offered me a full professorship with tenure to start, to come here. I was not sure what tenure was. England, yeah. And I said, no, thank you very much, because I thought it was just one more position. So, I thought, well, in the middle of here in Indiana, career in Europe playing. So, and then I went to the concert, and the concertmeister of the Spalla of the orchestra, I told him, he said, oh, I don't believe it. Tenure, the full professorship, so we have to celebrate. I said, oops, I think I did something wrong. I did not accept. How come? And so, just again, long story. By the way, during the Mendelssohn concerto, I almost missed my entrance in the second movement, thinking I must be really an idiot, not have accepted that. So I was, and then when I got back to the hotel, there was a answering machine, a message from the dean, asking, just talk to me again, having a coffee together before I left for London. And then this is what I think is incredible in this country. I asked him, tell me, considering I'm doing the most important thing that you can imagine I can do in your school, if the telephone rings is, let's say, the Philadelphia Orchestra saying, well, Mr. whatever, Lang canceled a tour in Asia, and they are leaving tomorrow for a 2-week or 3-week tour in Asia, I said, what would you expect me to answer? He said, you go home, pack and leave. And I said, okay, but last question is, to whom should I communicate with? Who am I going to talk to? So look, I'm leaving for 3 weeks. And then he said, no one, you don't have any boss here. You come and go. The only thing I would expect and I need is that you make your students happy. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was extraordinary. And I said, we have a deal. I was so impressed with the idea of non-bureaucracy, but just, going for what really matters. if the students are happy, it's because they are learning, because they're progressing. So this is what really matters. So, and I accept it because of him.
Well, they also want an artist, and they don't want somebody to just sit and be still. They see you as an artist, and they want to foster that idea of having an artist teaching. So that's Roberto Plano is also with you. I heard that he's going back to Europe. But anyway, I have another question to ask. I know you have your parents are from Europe, and I know they immigrated to Brazil, and it's different being children of immigrants, and the ethical professionalism that is ingrained in you since an early age, and the idea of nothing comes easy. Everything has to come with hard work, professionalism, and being thankful for what the opportunities you have. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I always tell my students that sometimes the big problem for me, for a student to progress, many times it's not the lack of talent, many times is not the technical difficulty, but the lack of patience to practice correctly. Sounds very obvious, but it's not. I think the same way we are what we eat, we are a result of what we eat. We play the result as a consequence of what we practice. And practice and playing are two completely different things. And I could make just some analogies with other professions or other activities like sports. If you want to become a tennis player, I mean, you have to dedicate hours and hours and hours. It's not just go there and play with your friends. To play piano, many people think, or many students, because I think it comes from ideas from the childhood. And this is what is complicated many times for the students. They are used to one kind of approach towards the piano, because for them is to play. If I play the right notes, if I play the right tempo, the right, more or less what is written there, I'm playing very well. And what is difficult is for them to understand, especially nowadays, with such a competition in the world, the fact that China went into the game since, I would say, 20 years ago. I was in the jury of the Chopin when Yun Di Li was the first Chinese to win. And just as a parenthesis, after Yun Di Li won the Chopin competition, there have been sold in China 80 million pianos because of that. Then you imagine 80 million kids learning piano, what it means to the world, to the market, especially in about 15 to 20, 25 years, which we are now. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand why that. It's very simple. I think Yun Di Li was that win generated incredible things. Having said that, to play the right notes, or to play Chopin Opus 10 number 2, like the wind, with all notes, or Feu Follet, or a final third, with hands exchanged. So doesn't make you an artist or a fantastic pianist anymore. I think the great challenge for me is to make the students understand that music is a language. And as a language, you have to learn grammar. You have to learn the verbs. You have to learn when you have a stop, when you have a comma, when you have a question mark, an exclamation mark. So music and all this, otherwise, I mean, you're going to read the text like an actor just reading the text without any interpretation. So, and this is one thing. And for that to happen, you have to know the elements that you have to work during your practicing time, which if you practice 4 or 5 hours a day in a week, there's 35 hours. They come for 1 hour lesson. What do you think they're going to do in the lesson? What they did during 35 hours. So the lesson is just a sample. It's not magic. It's like genetic engineering. You just talk about this, and that, and then they have to apply those concepts, in the whole piece. But for you to do that, you have to use your brain. You have to think what you're doing, why you're doing. You have to, now in my time, to have only rich people could have a recording, a tape recording machine. Today you have your phone. How am I doing? How am I sounding? What's the quality of sound? When you look at the score, the difficult thing is to look what is behind the score. Because otherwise a computer could play what the score is written, But how? What is a tempo? What's the difference between pulse and tempo? Is the metronome the right idea of tempo? Or what is the metronome? So you have to think, and you have to adjust your personality, your emotional history, your knowledge, your talent, your intelligence, and your patience in order to solve that big problem and say, well, how am I going to say that? How do I feel about that? Because when you go on a stage, I'm talking about professionalism. And there are students who I told them, I told many students, look, have you thought about being a dentist? Because clearly they don't want to, but I say that after 6 months, after a year, because they can be wonderful. And I don't say that in a kind of a pejorative way, in a criticism, because just to call the attention that perhaps you love music. But if you love music, you don't have to be a professional. You can love music and be other, and perhaps you can even love more music. And I know many people who loved music and became professionals and started hating music. Mm. So the whole thing is about love for music. And in our days, if you want to become a professional, you cannot ignore the market. You cannot ignore with whom you're going to compete, because you have to be invited to play. Nowadays, of course, you have the internet. You have lots of things that, which, to be honest, I don't deal well with. I have some I respect and I admire, but I have. It's not me, my personality, just to put my tape there and say, look how wonderful I am, in other words. I have some difficulty doing that. I remember when I was still fighting to become a pianist, a professional. I used to think, I mean, if I'm 30, 55, and nobody invites me for a concert, I'm going to do something else. I don't want to ask people to come to my recitals. I felt kind of if I do that, it's because I'm not wanted. So, this kind of old-fashioned ideas, which answering your question is very difficult, but, I think I try to, especially you mentioned, to finish that, I have to say that in this country, for instance, I think life is very comfortable. You go to a restaurant, you ask for a Coke, and you can have as many refills you want, paying for just one. If you would go in the old Soviet Union, to have just one Coke was really hard. Forget about refills. I remember, I played in the Soviet Union. I remember friends of mine coming out from Soviet Union. You know what? They wanted to come out and play here. Do you know why? Because they wanted to buy three things. First of all, they would come to the West to earn in hard currency, to be able to buy a pair of jeans that they didn't have in Moscow, in Russia, Nescafe, and a video cassette. That was the dream. And for that, you had to be chosen to represent Soviet Union. And what are your solutions for that? 10-hour practicing and winning and playing better and better and better, the competitiveness. So here, again, you can have as many refills, air conditioning everywhere. So it's too comfortable sometimes. And perhaps that answers the basic of your question.
Well, I could sit and listen to you speak, but I would like for us to listen to one of your recitals, and Chopin Ballade number 4, I think. That's where we have the cue, although you play in that recital all of them. So that's Hunter College in New York City. And I think I would just let the audience hear that as well. Unfortunately, I will have to stop. And it's not the ballad, it's the scares number one. So I apologize for that. I had a different link.
I was about to ask you already after 1 minute to stop.
Scares number one. And it's amazing. Every time we hear you play, we learn. And that's the thing. You bring up something different that somebody else have not done it. That's what you were talking about, right? Not only just playing the notes, but saying something in your own language. Just listening to 5 minutes, I heard things that I never heard from other people playing.
If I can mention something about that, I think when you play a piece, And when you listen or you are with other pianists or the musicians, equally, people who you respect, and so I feel that we are all we are on the top of a mountain, but where you have 360 degrees, a view. I think what makes the whole thing fascinating is that each one of us, each one artist, you cannot, even if you were looking to the same direction, you are going to find details in that view that will catch you and that you think it's worth mentioning and showing. And this is what I think is magical about, which would be, in my view, very much including that answer that you asked me about students. And so what the students should be, I think they have to know, for them to think, okay, give me, what do you think about that? What is nice? What is there any voice that you think is important?
Mm-hmm.
Because the heart, our lungs are there in the music. I mean, we don't breathe like a metronome. So, and this is, well, when you say that, it's a great compliment, I think. And I think in terms of sound, for me, I mean, the greatest compliment I ever always wanted, and was not that I had, good fingers, I play fast, or is that my piano did not sound like a piano. Mm-hmm. That's the greatest compliment a pianist can receive. Almost as if transforming. It's like you have to be a magician. It's like have a rabbit out of the of the piano and make people go to a different place. And this is what I think, and that comes from that perception of what you really think about that music is. And you can be absolutely correct. You cannot say, no, you're not playing, you're playing the wrong tempo. No, you can play very, in academic way, it's not, whereas piano you play forte, it's not that. So within what the composer wrote, you can bring things. And this is what the difficulty in magic that you have to achieve.
The layers that you bring out and the meaning of each note.
Transparency of your sound is a three-dimensional experience.
And the way you use the pedal too is just very, very clean and very clear. So I'm a fan, and I can't hide this. Andrea has a question for you, and she's going. But before I let her ask the question, I just would like to thank you profusely for accepting this invitation. It's been a pleasure. One more time, I can't express how much I admire your playing, and I will always learn by listening to you playing. So thank you very much for being you, for being such a wonderful pianist, and for accepting this invitation. So I'll let Andrea ask you the final question.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for generosity and your words. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. This is a beautiful and amazing interview. Thank you very much, Arnaldo. Arnaldo, researchers said that only 0.2% of the world's population had perfect pitch. So I had the pleasure to meet you in person when I was 14 years old, when you were invited by Belkis Carneiro de Mendonça here in Goiânia. And I played 5 notes in a chord for you, and you got them all right. In your experience, how does the perfect pitch, did it help you, or does it help better?
Well, I can ask you. If I would be a singer, that would be a disaster. It would be a disaster because actually, if now I will use my engineer background, the perfect pitch is nothing more than a good memory, or memory for frequencies.
Yes.
If Mozart would be living with us now in our days, he would not have perfect pitch, because the A that we consider 400, 440 now, the Berliner Philharmonic is playing 443. Mozart's pitch, the A was 432. So, if you play an A for Mozart, he would say this is a B flat. So, the perfect pitch is basically the memory of a sound. So I don't think you were born with a perfect pitch, because the baby does not know what an A is. He has to learn what an A is. So it's just an ability which can help when you forget something in the left hand and you know the harmony and helps you, which happened to me once. First time I played Tchaikovsky piano concerto, I got lost in the second movement. And I say that with great pride. And because I could find my way because of my left hand, because, I think it's a very good for violinists, because the violin helped me very much, the perfect pitch, because it helps you to intonate, to play in tune. Mm-hmm. Because you're very sensitive that note is really the note that your brain has. So there is always a connection between what a D is and the D that you hear. So you adjust. But for a singer, for instance, depending on the pitch she's playing with the instrument, must be difficult. The other day I was in my car listening to Brahms Piano Concerto, number 1. I turned it off, the radio, because I started listening instead of D minor, I started listening in D sharp minor, and that gave me, because I associated what the music was with the keys. So, and I got nervous about it.
Yes, thank you very much, Arnaldo. It's really an honor to be with you here in this program, in this project. Thank you very much. Rose, do you have one more question?
I can talk to you all day long. You already said a lot of things for young pianists, and is there any other advice that you would like to give to them?
Yes, my advice perhaps would not be only directed to the students, but I think the parents and the teachers. I think sophistication and quality comes with the attention to the details. And sophistication. I always think that when you teach someone, for instance, a student who is tense, and you try to help him just, being more flexible and this and that, it's always a struggle, because I always say that we have, instead of 10 fingers, we have 10 dogs. So, and when you train your dogs in the wrong direction, it's always very difficult for them. You give them a treat, go there, go there, go there. After 2 years, you say, no, go there. The dog looks at you. It's not fair. So your fingers are the same. So the ideal should be always to have teachers who, in practicing, in a way, ideally, where your way of playing is not this or that, but is the right one, because that's the only way you can play, is the right one. I know that because I have many, many students that came with lots of problems here and there, you know, let alone the reasons, but it's always a struggle. And many times when you see schools like Curtis, which takes, you know, only, you know, people who already can play. So these are the, you know, they get already the, I wouldn't say the filet mignon, but, you know, they don't have to work on that. So it's very easy to have students like that. The difficult thing, in my view, as for us teachers, is to help them to find a way to play that they feel comfortable, and that's going to be the definitive one that they feel good about, if they want professionals or teachers. So, and this is what basically, and the attention to the detail is for me, is the essence, because quality is what I do, is what we should do.
Well, thank you very much one more time. She's going to disconnect us, but she's going to put us backstage. So if you can wait just 3 more minutes, as she will put us backstage, and then we would like to just personally thank you after she closes the program. So thank you very much, Arnaldo. It's been a pleasure. It's been a dream come true, because I've been your fan all my life. And it's wonderful.
Me too.
Thank you very much.
It's been great talking to you guys, and thank you. And, you know, I apologize for talking sometimes too much. So.
No, never too much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye. Muito obrigada pela presença de todos. Esse é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas da Universidade Federal de Goiás, Reitoria Digital, Mississippi State University e a Universidade do Atlântico, na Colômbia. Além de mim, fazem parte desse programa Rosângela Yazbek Seba, Pablo Lisboa e Yamira Rodrigues Nunes. Todas as semanas, às 17 horas, às sextas-feiras, estamos aqui com um convidado muito especial. Muito obrigada pela presença e até a próxima semana.